The Stateside Soccer Show is now covering Ted Lasso.
If that's a joke, I love it. If not, I cannot wait to unpack that with you.
That's no joke. The Stateside Soccer Show now presents Believe Cast. We aren't talking about faith or ghosts.
Do you believe in ghosts, Ted?
I do. But more importantly, I think they need to believe in themselves.
We are talking Ted Lasso episode recaps. So sit back, get ready for us to discuss all the tea.
You know, I always figured that tea was just going to taste like hot brown water. And you know what? I was right. Yeah, it's horrible.
Hello and welcome back to Believe Cast, presented by the Stateside Soccer Show. We are a Ted Lasso recap podcast. My name is Jordan Wiegand, and with me today is a man who is going to sing Let It Go later on in this very podcast, Logan Stone.
I'm looking forward to that. You might not be, but I am. Hi Jordan, how's everything going? I'm good, I guess.
Yeah, well, behind the scenes action here, we usually record these way in advance. We took a long break for our previews, so we're actually like catching up. So we're like, crap, we got to get back on these. So it's been a few weeks since we've recorded one of these. But yeah, we'll be talking episode 7, Make Rebecca Great Again. But before we get into that, I just kind of want to open the show with, we will be, we got the premiere date for season 3. It's March 15th. And I know you're probably listening to this on March 8th and wondering, how are they going to get through all of season 1 and season 2 before next Wednesday? We won't, is the answer to that. So the way that we're going to be going is you'll still get episodes on Wednesday. That will be from the previous seasons. And then later that week, because the show releases on Wednesdays, probably Friday or something like that, we will be getting out an episode with the new season 3 recaps. And we'll just kind of be juggling 2 Believe Cast episodes a week. One old, one new. So that's how we'll be going. So look, they didn't tell us this in a good, timely fashion. So we have to kind of play with what we're dealt here, but that's why Logan and I are also going to try to get a few of these knocked out before then. So we will be talking episode 7, Make Rebecca Great Again, story by Joe Kelly and Brendan Hunt, teleplay by Jason Sudeikis, directed by Declan Lowney, and it aired September 11th of 2020. The synopsis: Rebecca celebrates her first anniversary as a divorcee as the team plays a match in Liverpool. Logan, your first thoughts when you watched Make Rebecca Great Again?
Yeah, I know this episode got ranked really highly on IMDb, and I agree with it. I really like this episode as far as Rebecca's concerned. Like, it really does kind of build on her, I guess, her past, but also going forward and kind of understanding how she's been throughout the divorce, because we've gotten a lot about Rupert, right? Rupert's been cheating on her ever since. He's always had this fling. He doesn't seem to really care. The club's kind of in disarray, but again, he kind of passes that off as like he doesn't care about it anymore. And maybe he does. We don't really know at this point. But I think this episode's really good for character development for Rebecca. So I really enjoyed this one, and I think Keely and Rebecca have some really good moments in this episode.
I like this episode, but this is probably my least favorite of the season.
Okay.
To me, it just feels the least Ted Lasso-like, meaning because they're in a whole different town, we're not seeing a lot of the same sets. So it kind of gives you a little bit of a, oh, that's nice type of thing. But it is, especially the panic attack part is very tough to watch, I feel like, especially with the high screeching sound that accompanies it. But this is probably the one I look forward to the least when watching the season, but I still think it's overall like good. You know, it's still a great episode. It's just not up there for me. Okay. So let's dive in here. So we open up with Nate getting locked in the bus storage area, where they keep all the bags. That's how the episode opens. He's trying to fix some baggage and gets locked in. Ted is then seen talking to his son and wife, and Ted gets the bad news that John Lennon and George Harrison have passed away from Beard here. He's like, oh, you're not going to tell the kid that the two of the Beatles are dead, because the kid wants Ted to go say hi to all 4 Beatles when they go up to Liverpool. And I like Beard here where he says it was Keith Richards that killed them. Just kind of like this weird joking conspiracy for musicians, I guess. But let's not forget the real conspiracy that Paul McCartney is one of the ones who died and was replaced with a lookalike. That was a thing that was a real conspiracy for a while. But I saw Paul McCartney in Baltimore this summer, and he looked pretty much like himself. Rebecca gives Keely Higgins' spot on the plane and tells him that he is staying there. So Rebecca and Keely are taking a separate mode of transportation. They're taking a private plane while everyone else is on the bus. Higgins is like, hey, that's fine, I'll go on the bus. But he's getting punished by Rebecca here because she was not liking how he was dealing with Ted and being kind of like pro Ted at this moment. And yeah, she's looking out to punish him. And before we get to the credits here, wow, a lot happens before the credits, by the way, in this episode. We also learn that Richmond has not won at Everton for 60 years. And Ted gets asked by a reporter about Jamie leaving and how since then they've lost 1 and drawn 1. And then the bus takes off and immediately stops as they let Nate out. So I ask you, Logan, before we hit the credits there, that's where we hit the credits. How did Ted know Nate was down there, you think? Just intuition?
Yeah, I think a little bit of intuition. And I think it plays more to the fact, I think, that he notices Nate. Like, he knows where he's like, oh, crap, Nate's not on this bus. Where the hell is he? And then he goes, but I think it's so Nate-like to get stuck under the bus because he's just, it seems like he's very, like a klutz. Like, he doesn't, he doesn't ever know where he is, or his surrounding area is not something that he's always thinking about. So I think that he struggles sometimes in getting in awkward situations and positions, and he's like, oh, shoot. So, yeah, I think ultimately it's just Ted's intuition that he knows he's under the bus.
That's a good answer. Ted is somebody that notices Nate, so it makes me wonder how many times has this happened in the past and Nate did not go notice and he sat in 5 hours worth of being locked in the bus carriage. But we come right out of the credits and Keely and Rebecca have their huge room. It has 2 bedrooms, huge like living space. It looks great. It's like a DVC resort. But it's Rebecca's old anniversary weekend. So like her with Rupert, her anniversary weekend's the first one since they got divorced that she is celebrating or not celebrating, and why she's kind of sad and upset a bit. And yeah, so we get that. But before we go there, man, there's a lot of cuts in this episode. Like, I wrote down the notes every time it cuts a scene, and it goes from there. And I was thinking, oh, we find out Keely is on the TV. Not yet. We go to Nate handing out the room keys and Ted asking for movie night or pillow fight. And I ask you, Logan, what's your choice here? Because when I come down there next week, it's movie night or pillow fight.
I'm not gonna lie, I hate pillow fights because we used to have some really huge battles between like my brother and my best friend, and like you get a headache after being knocked around a couple times to the pillow. Like, if you get somebody,
it's called concussions,
right? If you, right. Wait, what's your name again? No, but yeah, I think you go into concussion protocol quite often when you're doing the pillow fight. So I'm gonna go with movie night, and I love their choice of movie, Jordan.
Yes, Iron Giant.
Great movie.
I don't think I can't remember a pillow fight that I've actually had. maybe I did some as kids, but don't
Yeah.
remember them. But if so, they weren't really rough, I don't think. But I like that Ted says, "Hey, next time, one time you pick pillow fight, you're never picking movie night again. It is just that much fun. Whatever Ted has planned for pillow fights is next level, apparently." Now we cut up, and Rebecca's back on the phone. She's trying to make a reservation for dinner, and she's getting, I don't know, I would say a sitcom classic here where she thinks the person is replying to her, but it's actually a recording, and it is Keely on TV. As Keely's flipping through channels and staring at herself doing, she's kind of like the, what's the lady's from Disney's name? What was her name?
Wait,
It
what?
did like the 10 things you got to do at the parks or whatever, and she's like
Stacey,
always
right?
on TV. Stacy, yes,
Yeah.
yes,
That's what I thought of. I wrote that in my notes. Like, that's like Stacy.
yes. That's exactly what Keely is. There, Keely is like, hey, there's clubs, pubs, right? Karaoke, all this kind of good stuff for you to do in Liverpool. Yes. So then from there we have Flo. Sassy Collins coming into the room, and Rebecca has to introduce her to Keely. They also state what Flo states, that it is, she knows who Keely is because her ex used to masturbate to her like a lot or something.
That was a great.
Yeah, because we kind of forget Keely is like a model. She's famous. She's as famous as any of these other characters.
Yep.
And yeah, so she comes in. She calls Rebecca stinky, and we don't really get the reason behind it at this point. We'll get that later on. And then we cut to Iron Giant movie night. One thing I really like here is Isaac McAdoo is going to nudge one of the other players when he's on his phone. And when he nudges him, it's like, hey, dude, put the phone away. And Roy sees this, by the way. Roy sees this. So this is a bit of Isaac's character arc, Isaac's character growth. He started out, bullying Nate. Roy got him to stop that. And now Isaac is kind of bought in even more to the Ted Lasso stuff. That's, hey, get off your phone. We're watching this movie as a team. So I really liked seeing that from Isaac. We'll get more of him later on in the show. I don't think that's a spoiler to say, really.
Yeah, no, I like this scene. And this is, what's funny is people go, how realistic is this? This is very realistic. Like you have like different team events that they'll do at the hotel. A lot of them they'll eat together, which they kind of do, and they will go out to like steakhouses after games. They'll go out on the night and kind of party and celebrate when they do win. But yeah, no, I really do enjoy just the dynamics between, and then like the three coaches sitting in the back. It's kind of like when you were like a little kid and like the coaches would put on a movie or something like that, and they would kind of strategize about the game behind you, but then everybody else would watch the movies. And this is when we get a great quote from Beard when Ted goes right around, I think it's like the 70th minute or something like that, or I can't remember what minute it was, but he said it's a minute.
74th minute or 72nd minute, something like that.
And there's going to be a bunch of grown men crying in a room. And Beard goes, oh, yes, I know. I'm already ready. And he throws the Kleenex box up on the thing, and he kicks back and he watches it.
Yes.
I love Beard so much. But yeah, that's a great. But it is. It's so crazy how realistic this TV show is. Like they have done their research on like how teams exist outside of just the game.
And during here is where Ted asks Nate like what he would say to the guys, and Nate's like, I can't tell you that, And by the end of the episode, we understand why he's a little shy about saying this, right? He has all this stuff planned, but he still, I like where Ted says here, like, I am asking your opinion. Like, it's not just, like trying to put you on the spot. I like want your input on this team type of thing. And I like when Beard says, well, at least he didn't like stammer this time, right? So we are seeing some growth in Nate as well, where he is able to kind of handle interactions a little better. He's not at the point of still being like, Nate, me? Like, he's getting a little more comfortable with the situation. So we cut back to Rebecca, Sassy, and Keely at dinner. And this is where Flo or Sassy hits on the waiter for Rebecca. I always forget what her name is, by the way, like every time I watch this, because Sassy doesn't stick with me, and then like they say Flo once. So like the whole time I'm like, her name's not really Sassy, right? And I actually caught it this time that it's Flo, and I was just like, oh, okay. That's like her real name, but they never use it. So it's just something that I'm like, I always forget what her name is. I'm just like, oh yeah, Rebecca's friend is kind of like how I've mentioned her in the past when I'm talking about this, but I made sure I paid attention. Well, Flo is going to excuse herself to have a smoke. Rebecca mentions she doesn't smoke anymore. And Sassy's going to run into Ted, who is asking for a fax machine, which the guy is like, no, we don't have one. But when he's hanging up the phone, before he gets to turn to Ted, the concierge says this on the phone, and I want to get your opinion on this, by the way. He says, I would suggest flushing it again, but harder. Logan, how do you flush harder?
So I thought about this too, and I was like trying to think, because I've been to England just recently over the summer, and I was like, was there anything different about? And there is, Jordan. So there is usually a 2-button toilet for those that are in America. There's one on the left and one on the right. I was always very confused about it. And I actually Googled this when we were over there. One is actually for like more solid waste, and one is actually for just your piss. So I think there are different versions of flushing, and I think there are toilets that do exist that have, which I don't know if
we have those that work actually.
Do you really?
Yeah. It'll have like a button, and it has one droplet, and then there's a button that has 2 droplets or whatever. And you're supposed to do the one for more water when you have more waste.
Yes.
And one is for just liquid.
Yeah, so maybe that's what they're talking about. But then also, Jordan, I'm picturing this person up there going like really hard on the.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
You know what I mean?
Or like how they have the string bathroom.
Yeah,
sometimes
like when you pull on the
trying
thing.
to really, he like pulls the whole string off the thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just found that line so funny, and I'm sure they put it in there to be funny. But I'm like, it's like I didn't notice it until this rewatch. Actually.
I like when Flo approaches Ted, and he goes, "Yeah, I need to send a fax." And she goes, "Who are you trying to communicate with? Somebody in the 1990s or 1997?" And he goes, "Yeah, actually." And she goes, "Okay, well, what are you going to tell him?" And he goes, "I'm going to tell," or like, "What are you going to tell yourself or something?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, I'm going to go back and remind myself to buy Apple stock."
And she says, "Remind me to kill J.K. Rowling,
so
I can write the first Harry Potter book."
Oh, man.
And I like how he says, "I'll write handle so there's no paper trail instead of murdered."
Yeah.
But yeah, he has like this little meet cute with Flo. And she goes back to tell Keely about meeting Ted. Doesn't mention his name, by the way. She says, I just met this great, what'd she say, marble of a man?
Yeah.
And then immediately asks where Rebecca is, because Rebecca was not there. Rebecca is paying the bill at this time. But Flo gets the question asked, how did the nickname Stinky come about? And it's because Rebecca moved to Flo's town, and she said that she already was taller than her and already had bigger boobs, so she made up to people that her nickname was Stinky, I guess, to kind of just get one over on her. And then they became friends. So I guess now it's a term of endearment. But look, I want to ask you, Logan, if I just started calling you Stinky all the time, would you be able to accept that? I think that would be a friendship ender for me.
Yeah, it would be. And you continue to do it, I'd be like, nah. I'd just be like, every time you called me that, could you imagine on our podcast, be like, hey, Stinky, like, what do you think about
Logan? Like, I'm Logan.
Right. I'd be like, okay, first of all, we're not going to get any kind of attention because people are going to think we're idiots. I don't know. It's just very asinine, like the way that it is.
You'd be like, well, shithead, I think what we're doing today.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I don't know why Rebecca stands for this. I would not. I would end this.
Mm-hmm.
This would end. By the way, they haven't talked to each other in 6 years. This would.
Yeah.
I would have ended this so quickly. if she continued calling me that, by the way. Rebecca comes back and has covered the bill, and, Sassy and Keely are going to act like they were going to pay. And we cut over to Ted, who's had a few drinks at this point. While looking over the divorce paperwork, he gets a text from the lawyer who says that he can just take a picture of the docs. And then Nate is trying to slide his paperwork underneath of the door, and he kind of loses his cool on Nate. This is probably the worst we've seen Ted. Wouldn't you think so?
Yeah. And like, I think I'm trying to remember. I think he yelled at Nate one other time, or like he gets no, it was Jamie that he gets mad at. That's right. Cause he gets mad at Jamie.
Practice. Yeah.
Yes. Right. But then this is the first time he yells at Nate. And I think it shows like Ted seems like somebody that would never yell at Nate because he knows what Nate has gone through. He's probably been verbally abused by the former manager. So I think there's always that line of like, he can cross it with some people, but he knew for a fact. And I think the audience kind of picks up on the fact that he never wanted to cross that line with Nate. And he gets to a point where he yells at Nate, and Nate's kind of been, I think at one point earlier too in the episode, Nate was kind of like, people, the fact that you trust me, I don't want to tell you what I think, because it was like when they were sitting down to watch the movie, he was kind of like, I don't want you to fire me, get mad at me, yell at me, kick me out if I give you my true, honest opinions on the team and the players. And he's like, I would never do that. And then he gets mad at him. It's like, it's kind of that, well, here I am giving you my opinion and now you're mad. Like, I'm so confused. So yeah, mixed signals.
Yeah. Yeah, a little odd for Ted to have lost his cool there. He's a few drinks in. He's dealing with his divorce, so that's what's happening there. We cut over to match day at Goodison Park. Higgins is watching the game at home with his family, all in Richmond kits. I really like this. And by the way, let's clarify. This is like Carlo Ancelotti Richmond, all right? This isn't Carlo Ancelotti Everton. This isn't the current Everton team that is in relegation zone. So a little more believable that they had not won there in 60 years. Ted apologizes to Nate and has Nate read the notes that he wrote. And there are a bunch of roasts in there with also some good bits of information on how to like better themselves. He's roasting them, right? But he's also saying like, you got to work on your defense here. You got to work on this thing. He gets on Obasanya about his defense, right?
Yeah, or he gets mad because it's his indecisiveness.
Oh, indecisive.
Like he's so indecisive that, and then I think he compares him to like the only other person I've ever seen like this is Nelson Mandela or something like that, which
like imprisoned by his wrong something.
Right.
It's a cold
decisions.
one, by the way. That is not so sure Sam would actually be cool with that, but
there's some good ones in there though. It's like, and he calls Sam the shitty sidekick, and then he calls Isaac big dumb. You know what? I don't know. I don't know if I can say that word, but. He looks tough, but isn't. And then he goes, Danny Rojas, or if football is life, then your defense must be death.
Yeah. And he gets Roy. Roy stands up and says, say it. Drop the papers, look me in the eye, and say it. And, he kind of rips Roy for losing his fire, losing the burning passion, losing his anger. Anger is what made him great. And Roy goes over, rips up the bench from the floor, and leads them out to a 1-0 victory over Everton, with Roy being a bright spot, according to the commentators. And that was how they won. They won 1-0. Ted gets introduced to Flo again here. They already know each other. But it's like in the celebrations, then Keely walks over to Roy and they talk a bit. And then Roy says, we're going out to celebrate. The team's all excited. They want to know where to go. So Roy brings Keely up and she recites her line from the TV. and they all go karaoke. Sam is singing Wonderwall. Coach Beard is singing Bad Romance, and then Rebecca will sing Let It Go. And during Let It Go is when Ted has a panic attack. So why do we think he has it here? Is it the song Let It Go? Is it something? It seems like at one of the points, I forget what line she sings, but it's like at that is kind of when it starts to affect Ted a bit. And I'm thinking it's because of the song, right? It's like letting go of his marriage, right? Letting go of the issue. And it causes a panic attack where he has to leave the karaoke bar. And like I said, some high-pitched squealing from the sound designers make this part pretty tough for me.
Yeah, I think it's a part where they're singing like the past is in the past and you just need to let it go kind of thing. And I think he's thinking this really is it. Like the moment I sign this paper, I think it's over, completely over, and I can't get it back. So yeah, I think that's when he has the moment, and it's that like ringing in your ear, screeching noise. I should play it for Jordan, but that'll be our new night drive. We'll play it as we end the episode. Just this buzzing in your ear. But no, yeah, I think it's a perfect indication. I mean, I've never had a panic attack, but from what I've heard, it's kind of like that, or it's kind of where just everything becomes just so overwhelming that you just kind of lose it. And yeah, I think this is a pretty clear depiction of like what's going on inside of Ted's head.
Yeah, and we get Rebecca standing over him. Did time pass here, or did she see him leaving immediately? Stop, you think? I think time passed. I think he lost sense of time is my thought.
Yep, I do too. And like with all the voices going on in his head, like he hear his wife and he can hear his kid and like other things. And then, yeah, I got the impression that it was as she finished the song, she realized he wasn't there.
Yeah, and Ted is going to go sign the paperwork. And, and I think part of the reason why I think the same as you is because nobody else mentions this, by the way, that Ted left. And I think if Rebecca just abruptly stopped her song, people would have been like, oh, what was that about?
Right.
But they all kind of still act like, yeah, we're partying, we're having a good time. So I think she does kind of just excuse herself after she's done singing. Ted goes home and signs the paperwork, takes a picture of it. Not home. He goes to the hotel, sends it over. Keely is going to tell Rebecca she's going to walk. And we see Roy kind of lingering in the background. And they kind of give each other a little salute to each other. And Roy is going to walk her back all the way to the hotel room. He's going to kiss her, and he's going to leave her and say goodnight. Rebecca is going to see the waiter again, and she gets a text from Ted thanking her. And this is where we're supposed to think, Logan. This is where we're supposed to think she gets the text from Ted. She looks at the waiter, and that we cut to Ted. He gets a knock on the door, and we're all thinking, this is Rebecca. Right? This is Rebecca coming to be like, Ted, I want you. And then it's Sassy. It is not Rebecca. Sassy just walks in past Ted. And that's where it ends. But some good misdirection here. I remember definitely the first time I watched this, I was like, oh, okay. Rebecca going up there. Nope. Fake out. And I think this episode proves that the end game of this show is Rebecca and Ted together. I think that the fact that they tease it here and it doesn't happen, so that way when it does happen at some point, you're thinking, finally, almost like a Ross and Rachel type thing.
Yeah, I got that feeling too, that sense of like they want this to be a thing, but it's just not ready for it yet. Like they're both gonna go through this journey of like having different relationships and things like that, and things are going to work out. But yeah, I remember watching this first time and going, oh my God, Rebecca. And then I'm like, but it makes sense. I'm like, if that's the case, then like it's going to lead up to this idea where they finally, get together, they hook up, or what they start to fall for each other. And then all of a sudden she's going to have to break the news to Ted that she's been messing with him the whole time. Like just this was a bait and like switch kind of thing where it was like, we wanted you to fail. We were setting you up to fail. And sorry. But yeah, no, I think this is perfect. I think it was a really interesting twist on it. And I was like, oh, crap. But yeah, it did have me thinking the same thing. Like, I think eventually these two end up together.
All right, so that is the episode Make Rebecca Great Again. Yeah, I mean, really, this is an episode that I think like feels kind of longer on the longer side. I think it is a little longer.
I think it's 34 minutes or something like that.
But like when I wrote everything out, I'm like, oh no, everything kind of happens like boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
That I'm like, oh my God, we've only been recording 30 minutes and we're already wrapping up the episode. But
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, do you have anything else to add about this episode before we go to player of the week and employee of the week?
I mean, it is.
Anything you noticed? Or?
It is an interesting. I think because you said all the cut, like it cuts from scene to scene, it goes back to like storylines. I think that's what makes it feel long because you're like going through different kind of storylines with everybody. But I think you get a sense. I think the best part, and I think you mentioned it, but like when she tells Higgins he can't go, and he's just so upset. He's like, "What do you mean?" And she continues to torture Higgins, and it's kind of foreshadowing for things coming. But
yeah, no secret here. We're going to record the next one right after this, and so we watched that one already. I'm not going to spoil anything, but in case if you haven't watched episode 8, but let's just say there's more I want to say about the Higgins stuff in the next episode. So, and Rebecca as a whole. So I don't really feel like we can get into it too much in this one because there is a lot to talk about it on the next episode. But I guess let's go ahead. This will be like our shortest recap. But let's take a look at player of the week. I'll go first here. I have Isaac McAdoo, and I have this for showing signs of turning himself around. He nudged the player next to him to get him to focus. He's kind of taking on a little bit of a leadership quality. And just kind of want to go off the wall here because we don't get any of the actual gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
We do hear Roy was a revelation in the game, but I feel like I've said Roy every week. So I'm going to go ahead with Isaac McAdoo this week.
I am going to go with Roy Kent. And I'm going with Roy just because I think the scene with him ripping up the bench is brilliant. He scores the goal and the only goal to beat Everton after 60 years of not beating them at Goodison Park. But I really like Roy in this episode. I think too, kind of like you're kind of seeing a really soft spot start to open up with Roy. And I think you see that as he waits for Keeley outside of the club because he's really starting to kind of fall for Keeley. And I think it sets up a nice episode. 8's great because it all kind of comes together. But without spoiling anything, there's a lot of stuff that go on in 8. Maybe why this episode's not as deep. I don't think it's very much on the surface. So I think that's where I'll stand is Roy Kent. Hi, Kitty.
All right, let's go to employee of the week. I have Nate here for his speech in the locker room that helps get them that first win. So that's where I'm going.
Yeah, I am going to go with Nate as well, just because I think he is fantastic in this episode. I love that he falls asleep under the bus. And then when they get back from Richmond, that's always fun too. So not to spoil anything, it's not really a spoiler. It's the beginning of the next episode. But
it's like the first.
This is weird how I think this is the first time we get 2 episodes that they take place right after.
They feel like a two-parter, really, because. And that's why this one's probably going to be so short. There's so much to talk about in relation to this episode in the next one. And since we're trying not to spoil stuff for people that may not have watched it before, and if you stopped at this episode and you're like, oh, I'll watch the next one and then listen to their episode, we're trying to save you that right there. So next week, we'll have a huge breakdown of all of this stuff. And then also season 3 will have premiered. You'll have no season 3 spoilers on these older episode podcasts. And if you listen on the Believe Cast feed, they're all numbered by season number and episode number. So it might be easier to find and avoid the newer podcasts if you haven't watched them all on the Believe Cast feed instead of the Stateside show feed. But we both had Nate as employee of the week. I had Isaac as player. Logan had Roy. Next week we'll be talking episode 8 of season 1, The Diamond Dogs, which is a fun one. So we'll get into that. But yeah, other than that, have a great rest of your week. If you want to follow us or send us any Believe Ted Lasso feedback, Believe_cast on on Twitter. And our Gmail is tedlasso@gmail.com.